The piercing scream echoed through the quiet streets of Maplewood Lane, a sound so chilling it sent shivers down my spine. I stood paralyzed outside my apartment, the tips of my fingers pressed against the cool glass of the window, straining to understand the chaos unraveling just beyond. All I could hear was the frantic barking of a dog and the distant wail of sirens, a stark contrast to the serene suburban life I thought I knew. It wasn't until the flashing blue lights illuminated the darkness that the reality of what had happened began to dawn on me. It was the night of September 12th, 2021, a seemingly ordinary Friday in our close-knit community. Families filled the streets for evening walks, kids played until dusk, and there was an air of calm that cloaked Maplewood. Nestled between the well-kept lawns and manicured hedges was the home of Marissa Holloway, a single mother known for her kindness and warmth. She was someone everyone admired for her ability to juggle her demanding job and her two rambunctious children, all while maintaining a smile that could brighten any room. However, the calm that night was shattered when a distressing phone call came into the local police department. Marissa's voice, usually so reassuring, trembled with fear as she reported her son, Tommy, missing. Just a few hours prior, he had been playing in the backyard, and in the blink of an eye, he had vanished. Panic surged through the neighborhood as rumors whispered from door to door, and neighbors began to gather, eyes wide with concern and disbelief. The initial search for little Tommy felt like a futile exercise in dread. Police officers combed the area, canvassing the nearby woods and asking residents if they had seen anything unusual. Witnesses reported seeing him last playing near the old oak tree, a favorite spot for kids in the neighborhood. As the hours dragged on, the search party grew larger, fueled by the rising fear that something terrible may have happened. Then, just before dawn, a horrifying discovery would change everything. At first light, while the town was still draped in a blanket of sleep, a neighbor stumbled upon an abandoned shed at the edge of the woods. With a sense of foreboding, he kicked the door open, revealing a musty interior filled with dust and disarray. It was then he saw it, Tommy's red baseball cap lying on the ground, unmistakably, his heart racing. The neighbor rushed to alert the police, who were already prepared with a strategy to search the premises thoroughly. As investigators entered the shed, a wave of dread washed over them. Inside, they found not just Tommy's cap, but also a collection of unsettling items, children's toys, old photographs, and something that made their stomachs turn, a series of journal entries detailing an obsession with neighborhood kids. The pages were filled with notes about their daily routines, their likes and dislikes, and strange drawings depicting them in perilous situations. This was no mere coincidence. It was a chilling glimpse into the disturbed mind of someone they had trusted. Marissa Holloway, devastated and frantic, couldn't understand how her seemingly perfect neighborhood could hold such darkness. The police soon began their investigation into everyone in the vicinity, uncovering not only the shed but a network of hidden tensions in the community. It turned out that several families had reported strange occurrences, sightings of unfamiliar vehicles parked at odd hours, and whispers of a man named Derek, who lived just down the road and had no friends or family nearby. All eyes turned to him, the quiet recluse who kept to himself. As they dug deeper, the detectives uncovered a series of complaints against Derek. Odd behavior, strange late-night noises, and local children feeling uncomfortable around him. Yet, despite the mounting evidence, no one had connected the dots until Tommy went missing. So, armed with a search warrant, police decided to raid Derek's house. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their careers. Inside Derek's home, they discovered a hidden basement, locked away from prying eyes. The air felt heavy as they descended the creaking steps, illuminating the darkness with their flashlights. The horrific sight that met them sent chills down their spines, an array of disturbing evidence including photographs of children from the neighborhood, notes detailing their habits, and a chillingly constructed map pinpointing every location where Tommy had played. But still, there was no sign of the boy himself. Hours turned into days as the local community held their breath, praying for Tommy's return. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Derek, he remained adamant about his innocence, claiming he had no idea where Tommy was. As the investigation progressed, the timeline began to crack under pressure, revealing inconsistencies in Derek's alibi. Yet nothing could be traced back to him that definitively linked him to the disappearance. Time was running out, and the search for Tommy hung like a blade over Maplewood Lane. The pressure intensified, and soon the community came together for a candlelight vigil in support of Marissa and the search for Tommy. That night, as flickering candles illuminated the faces of worried neighbors, whispers filled the air. Could Derek actually be capable of such a heinous crime, or was he just a scapegoat in this tragic tale? As I stood at the edge of the crowd, listening to the heart-wrenching pleas for Tommy's return, something deep inside me felt unsettled, as if the true horror lay hidden just beneath the surface of those whispers. As weeks passed with no sign of Tommy, The investigation began to falter. The detectives were left with mounting frustration and unanswered questions, the community's hope dwindling as the days dragged on. Some began to point fingers at Marissa, questioning her parenting, while others rallied around her with unwavering support. The media frenzy surrounding the case fueled speculation, and soon a chilling mystery enveloped the neighborhood, casting a shadow of mistrust and fear that would linger long after Tommy's name faded from the headlines. Months later, in early January, a chilling discovery would surface. A fisherman exploring the edge of a nearby lake stumbled upon remnants of clothing, torn and frayed, almost unrecognizable. As investigators were called to the scene, an unnerving feeling settled over them. Could this finally lead to the resolution of Tommy's case, or was this just another cruel twist in a story that seemed destined to remain unsolved? As I stood on the banks of the lake, staring into the murky depths, one question lingered in my mind. If something evil was lurking in the shadows, would it ever truly be uncovered? The echo of a child's laughter was the last sound anyone would hear before everything changed on Hilltop Drive. I stood at the edge of my porch, breathless, as a piercing scream broke through the mundane evening air, twisting my gut into knots. It was a sound filled with pure terror, one that would forever haunt the memories of those who heard it. Just moments before, the neighborhood had been alive with the joyful chatter of kids playing outside, but now, an unshakable dread settled over us like a heavy fog. It was September 15th, 2022, and I remember how the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the rooftops. Hilltop Drive was a typical suburban lane, where every home had its neatly trimmed hedges and freshly painted front doors. Families often mingled on their lawns, sharing stories and laughter as the day faded to night. Among them was the Baker family, known for their 3 lively children, who seemed to be the heart of our little community. Sarah, the youngest, had a laugh that could light up the gloomiest of days. That evening, as the sun slipped away, Sarah had been playing tag with her older siblings, their laughter ringing through the air. But when the laughter turned to cries, I felt a chill. The children had been playing near the old oak tree at the end of the block, a landmark that had been a part of our community for generations. Sarah's sudden silence was the first sign that something catastrophic had happened. When the frantic parents began calling her name, panic quickly engulfed the neighborhood. The search party assembled, and shouts of Sarah echoed down the street. I joined others who were rummaging through nearby backyards, peering into dark corners, but no trace of her could be found. As the minutes ticked by, the dread in my gut twisted tighter, urging me to find the girl who had just been vibrant and full of joy moments earlier. As night fell, the sound of sirens filled the air, transforming our peaceful street into a scene of chaos and fear. The police arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they joined the search. The officers began questioning neighbors, scribbling notes, and examining the surrounding area. Each question felt more urgent than the last, as if the answers could lead us to Sarah before it was too late. My heart raced as I witnessed the lengths we would go to for one life among us. Hours dragged on, but no sign of little Sarah surfaced. Just when hope seemed to dwindle, a detective discovered something near the old oak tree that made my blood run cold. A small pink hair bow, Sarah's favorite, tangled in the roots of the tree. My stomach dropped as we all gathered around, a bitter realization settling in that whatever had taken her was as much a part of our neighborhood as the tree itself. The police intensified their investigation, focusing on the area surrounding the tree. They examined the soil and took samples, desperate to find any clues that could lead them to Sarah. Reports began pouring in about a stranger seen loitering in the neighborhood days prior, described as having an unusual demeanor. Their words echoed in my mind. He was just standing there, watching the kids play. This revelation added layers of fear to an already terrifying situation, turning our once safe street into a breeding ground for paranoia. Meanwhile, Sarah's family was surrounded by a cloud of desperate hope. They held a candlelight vigil that brought together everyone from Hilltop Drive, instilling a collective spirit of unity against the horror that had befallen us. As we lit candles, I could see the pain on the faces of her parents, their eyes hollow, filled with a longing that no words could ever express. These moments were haunting reminders of the fragility of life and the darkness that can erupt without warning. As days passed without answers, the police turned to the public for assistance, urging anyone with information to come forward. Tips flooded in, each one more disheartening than the last. Sightings of Sarah near various points in town emerged, but each lead ended in a dead end. The neighborhood was gripped by fear and suspicion, leading to whispers about everyone in our once close community, unable to distinguish friend from foe. With every passing hour, it felt as though we were losing Sarah more and more. Just as the case seemed to fade from public consciousness, a breakthrough occurred. A man living several miles away, who had recently been released from prison, was spotted acting suspiciously in the area. He had a history of child endangerment, and before anyone could fully grasp the implications, Law enforcement swarmed his house, only to find a shocking revelation inside: Sarah's belongings found strewn throughout his basement. The discovery sent shockwaves through Hilltop Drive, reviving hope and fear in equal measure. As detectives pieced together the timeline of events, they learned that this man had indeed been spotted in our neighborhood during critical times. But in a cruel twist, his alibi checked out, and he was released after a thorough investigation turned up nothing linking him to the abduction. The cycle of hope turned to despair once again. A palpable sense of dread hung in the air, and the families on Hilltop Drive felt as though they were living a waking nightmare, unable to escape the grip of fear. Months later, Sarah's case went cold, becoming a ghost of what once filled our lives with joy. The laughter that used to echo on our streets was replaced with a somber silence that gripped Hilltop Drive. Parents kept their children indoors, and the ominous shadow of distrust cast a pall over our community. I often went back to that old oak tree, now an unsettling reminder of what was lost. We thought we could trust our neighbors, but it became chillingly apparent that darkness can seep into the most unsuspecting places. And in the stillness of those nights, I could swear I still heard Sarah's laughter dancing on the wind. I would sit on my porch, wrapped in a blanket of unease, listening for a sound that would never come again. The question loomed over me like a storm cloud. Was there someone still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next opportunity to strike? Was it really safe to trust my neighbors, or had we all just turned a blind eye to the dark undercurrents flowing through Hilltop Drive? I never thought the quiet, picturesque Willow Creek would become the backdrop for an unspeakable horror. The air was thick with tension the day we received the call. Angela Parker, a beloved schoolteacher, was reported missing. It was a crisp October day in 2021, and the leaves had just begun to change, mirroring the ominous mood that swept through our small town. Angela was the kind of person everyone adored, known for her gentle spirit and dedication to her students. Her absence sent shockwaves through our community, leaving a haunting void. Angela had spent her days nurturing young minds at Willow Creek Elementary, always going above and beyond to ensure her students thrived. Parents respected her, children loved her, and the town cherished her presence. But as we gathered in the school gym for an emergency meeting that evening, whispers began to spread like wildfire among the parents. How could someone so beloved simply vanish without a trace? What could have happened to her? As the investigation unfolded, I learned that the last person to see Angela was her next-door neighbor, a man named Victor. Described as reclusive and unpredictable, Victor had always kept to himself, but his relationship with Angela was somewhat of a mystery. Neighbors mentioned that Angela often offered him food and checked in on him, attempting to break down the walls he had erected around himself. I couldn't shake the feeling that his silence held secrets. The police immediately turned their focus toward Victor, beginning their inquiries with him. Disturbingly, they found evidence that led them to believe he had been harboring dark thoughts. Among his belongings, they discovered notebooks filled with unsettling drawings and fragmented thoughts about Angela, longing mixed with jealousy. His demeanor during questioning was a mix of defiance and fear, and it was clear that he was hiding something monumental, something that could unravel the very fabric of our community. While the community banded together to search for Angela, I couldn't help but feel a growing apprehension about what Victor might do next. In our neighborhood, we thrived on trust, but now we were surrounded by suspicion, and the walls that once made us feel safe felt more like a prison. With each passing day, Angela was becoming more of a distant memory, and the sense of dread regarding Victor's troubled mind weighed heavily on me. What loved ones were being hidden behind those closed doors? Weeks passed, and the search for Angela grew grim. Frustration mounted as leads fizzled out, leaving the police with little to go on. I remember attending a candlelight vigil held at the school, where Angela's family stood with hollow eyes amid flickering lights and whispered prayers. The weight of their pain resonated with all of us, palpable in the cold night air. It was supposed to be a moment of unity, but instead, the unease hung like a thick fog over Willow Creek, overshadowing the hope we all desperately needed. Then one day, a break in the case emerged. A hiker in a nearby forest stumbled across a hidden clearing where a makeshift shelter had been constructed. Inside, they discovered personal belongings that belonged to Angela, her favorite scarf, a book she had taken with her that day, and something far more chilling, a message scrawled on a piece of wood that read, "I will never let you go." The police were immediately notified, and a search of the area turned up more evidence linking back to Victor. As investigators delved deeper into the connection between Victor and Angela, they uncovered a history of obsessive behavior, masked by his seemingly harmless persona. Through interviews with friends and family, it became clear that his fixation on Angela was more profound than anyone had initially realized. He had been stalking her for months, watching her every move, lurking in the shadows as she went about her life. The consistent presence of dread in the community now painted an even darker picture, reflecting the monster Victor had become. Time dragged on as authorities continued to search for Angela, grappling with uncertainty as to whether she was still alive. With each passing day, Victor's demeanor became increasingly erratic. The once quiet neighbor was now a ticking time bomb. His increasingly bizarre behavior was alarming to those around him, and I feared for the safety of everyone in our beloved Willow Creek. How could someone once trusted become a potential danger? I felt the lingering specter of dread cast over our neighborhood like a shroud. With mounting evidence against Victor, the police arrested him, fearful of what he might do next. As they questioned him, he began to unravel, spewing a mix of half-truths and delusional confessions. He claimed Angela was a figure in his mind, a part of himself that he simply couldn't let go. The darkness surrounding his psyche was evident, but still, the most pressing question remained: where was Angela? Despite his warped confessions, he could not provide any answers. As he was taken into custody, the town collectively held its breath, hoping for the worst to be over. But days turned into weeks, and Angela's whereabouts remained a mystery. The haunting echoes of her laughter were replaced with silence, and the fear that Victor could be holding the key to her fate darkened every corner of Willow Creek. I often visited the school where Angela taught, staring at the empty classroom where her vibrant spirit once thrived, wondering if we'd ever see her again. Would the truth ever emerge from the shadows? As the seasons changed, so did the tone of our community. Angela's case became a haunting symbol of how darkness can seep into everyday life, creating palpable fear among neighbors once bonded by trust. Months passed, but the police continued to scour Victor's home, hoping to turn up clues. However, the only thing